So starting part 2, you can see how our first row here is all color 7. So this is round 7 and we're using color 7. Color 7 is the two-tone using C and D colors. Color 7 will start with D first. Join at top to make a top block first. Top square, we chain 5 and work that back bump of the chain, inserting our hook to pull up our loop. In each of the chains, we're pulling up a loop as we have done in part 1 until we have 6 loops on our hook, and then make the connection back in that first stitch. But now we want to change to color C, which should be a lighter shade of your color D, and do the return pass with our C color. And then row 2, picking up a loop in each stitch as we go across row 1, make the connection in the next stitch, switching back to, so a hook under that color, switching back to color D, and continuing to alternate our colors on each row. The return pass of each row, we switch to the other color. Trying to keep those yarns from not being tangled as we worked on in part 1. Okay, so you can finish this top square, remembering to alternate, switching the colors for the return passes, and doing the bind off in color C. So I'm ready for my bind off row. And connecting to the side of the square, switching to color D. Oops. And doing that tight tie off knot. Okay, and then we're ready to work across. Remember, we need to carry our color C across to the other side of the square. So we pick up the loop, putting our hook under color C to pull up our loop. Insert into the next stitch, hook is over color C, pull up our loop, hook in the next, under color C, pull up our loop, over and under, make the connection. This time we'll pull up color C to make that connection and do the return pass. Okay, so we've done our top square. We now are going to work 6 in between squares and then ready to work another top square at that next. So this round is all color 7 using C and D. So you're just going to work all the way around with this color, and I'll meet you for next round. So I did want to show, for those of you working attaching in back, show you another square for this part here in that technique. So behind the first row, I'm going to make my connection of this in-between square. So make my connection. I also want to work underneath color D to pull up that loop and start the return pass, and then make sure my yarn isn't twisted as I work the return pass in color C. A forward pass for row 2, Make my connection to the loop in back just behind the side stitches, hook under, color C, pull D through, and make the return pass. And make the bind off row. And this time we go for the bind off, we go through both loops, hook under, color C to pick up D for the bind off of the last stitch and our tie off knot. Okay, so again, you can see how the working behind makes that nice edging along the square. So picking up our loop behind, again, we want to go under, over, color C to bring it to the other side. So I'm first going to find my loop behind, insert my hook, make sure color C is lying over the hook, so my hook is under, pull up a loop. Find the loop behind, insert hook, make sure hook is over color C, pull up a loop. Finding loop behind, under color C, pull up a loop. Finding loop behind, over color C, pull up a loop, and one last time. And under color C to pull up our loop. Continue to work your way around, working either through both loops or behind as you prefer. And all the blocks are made with color 7, the two-tone blocks all the way around. So when you've worked all 4 sides, you want to just make sure after that last bind off to enter into the same stitch as we started this round. To finish the bind off and to fasten off for this round. Make sure you cut both colors. Round 8 then has 2 squares of color 7, 2 of 6, 1 of 7, 2 of 6, 2 of 7. So starting with color 7, the same as we worked last round, we will start with the darker color D to join at the top square, chain 5, then pick up our loops in the back bump of each of those chains, 5, and then we'll insert in that same stitch, and we want to change to color C. So you can go ahead and finish this top square alternating colors as we did last round. We want to do this top square and the next square, the in-between square, using this color 7. So I'll let you work those 2 squares and then I'll join you and show you what comes next. The second square should start with color C. And we'll work 2 squares with color C as the only color. So you can go ahead and work these next 2 in-between squares using color C, and I'll join you at that point. So far we have done 2 squares, color 7, which is both shades of this colors, so D and C. We've done 2 squares using color C. Now we want to do just one more square with color 7. Start this block using color C. So you can continue working this one block, alternating between C and D, and I'll meet you at the end of this square. We'll work 2 more squares with color C. So I finished my next 2 blocks in color C to work 1 more square on this side, and that will be with color 7 again, alternating color D and C. So pulling up our loops, joining to that top square. Okay, and then we can finish up this block. So I'm at the end of this last square of the side. Make the final bind off and the tight tie off knot. And then we're ready to chain 5 again to start again with another top square. So remember, each side starts with 2 squares, the top square and the in-between square, using color 7, which is C and D. Then we do 2 squares with color C, 1 square color 7 using C and D, 2 squares using C, and finishing the side with 1 more square of that color 7. So when we work our next top square and we add that next, there will be the 3 squares in a row here of color 7 around the top or the corners. So you can go ahead and continue that all the way around. So when you've completed the round, your last square, you will just make that tie off and fasten off in the same stitch where we joined for our top square at the beginning of this round. Round 9, then we will start with 2 squares of color 6, 2, 5, 2, 6, 2, 5, and 2, 6. So 6 is using our color C, 5 is C plus G. Round 9, we're going to start with color C again, which is also coded as color 6. So we'll start the top square with our chain 5 and picking up our loops in the back bump. And we'll work the top square and this first in between square using color C. So you can make those 2 squares and then I'll join you after that. So we've done our 2 squares using color C, or number 6 on the chart. Now we're going to work a 2-tone square, 2 of them. So we'll make that last tie off knot, and then starting the new square, we'll pull up our loops with color C. 4, 5, 6 loops on the hook, and then we'll make our connection, and now we want to pull up color G to do the return pass. And you want to make sure that your hook is under color C. Okay, and you just want to make sure that G is not too loose there as you make that connection. And then we'll just pull up our loops for row 2 using G. We'll drop G, pull C, and make the return pass. So alternating our colors as we've done before. We'll make 2 blocks using these 2 colors, and I'll meet you at that point. So we've completed 2 squares with color 6, 2 squares with color 5, the two-tone. We're going to continue another 2 squares with 6. So we'll drop our G color, finish the bind off with C, and then we want to fasten off G. You might want to tighten that last loop before you do the tie-off knot. But we'll fasten off G, and then we'll do 2 squares just with color C, and then 2 more squares with the two-tone, 2 more squares of color C. So it's just 2, switch, 2, switch, 2, and 2. So you can go ahead and work that, and I'll meet you at the end of this first side to show you what that looks like, and then we'll finish this round. So I've worked down my first side, 2 squares, 2 squares, 2, 2, and 2. Now remember, on this last one here, the second square, it's also your first square of the next size as well. So this counts as 1, and we'll do 1 more and then start alternating colors. So you can go ahead and work around the other 3 sides, and I'll see you then. For our final round, we'll have 2 squares in color 6, which is color C, 2 squares 13, which is color G, 1 square of 5, which is the combination of C and G, another square of 6, 1 more of 5, 2 13, ending with 6. So you can go ahead and work those squares all in the same manner as we have done before. 2 squares, color 6, 2 squares, color 13. When you get to working a two-tone square on top of a two-tone and you're unsure which color, you want to start with the color of the bind-off row. So I can continue with my color G to make this final bind-off stitch and my tie-off knot. Then I'll start working down the row to pick up my loops using color 13 or color G. And then I want to switch and bring back color C for the return pass. Tightening up my colors. So you can finish working this two-tone block. 1 square, color 5, 1 square 6, 1 square, color 5, 2 squares, color 13, and 2 squares, color 6.